Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing Big Joke yet again, currently in the headlines. Thought of making this video after reading a recent article from the Thai Examiner, that's thaiexaminer.com. Article is titled, Big Joke Requests Time as Bangkok Police Station Weighs Cases Against Him and the Police Chief. Quote unquote, Big Joke seeks 10-day delay in money laundering case. Bangkok Police Station handles cases against him and the police chief amid intense scrutiny. It follows a complaint filed by lawyer activist Sitra Bibangkert there against the police chief, General Torsak Sukwimon. Quoting further, a lawyer for suspended Deputy National Police Chief General Surachate Hakpan, so-called Big Joke, on Wednesday asked for a 10-day extension to submit his defense testimony in the money laundering case against him. 27-year-old Ms. Pimpisut Chandler made the request under the glare of media cameras at Tao Pun Police Station in Bangkok. The country is avidly watching the progress of this case. It sees Thailand's most popular policeman fighting for his career. General Surachate is charged before the court with money laundering. The case is linked to illegal gambling website B&K Master. At the same time, similar and extensive allegations concerning dozens of police officers and suspended National Police Chief Torsak Sukwimon are also being examined at the same police station. It follows a criminal complaint by lawyer Sitra Bibangkert. However, no prosecution or charges have been decided upon in that case. Note, no prosecution or charges they haven't been brought yet. So again, for all the sort of fanfare and all the sensationalism out there, there aren't any charges in this. I thought of making this video overall and titling it the way that I did because somebody asked me the other day, they basically kind of put me on the spot and said, what do you think of him? And I've said for years, I only started following Big Joke's career because he became the head of Thai immigration and really shook things up there, and that was pertinent to this channel. And then his career was just such a colorful thing after that that I just kind of kept following it. Up until really a couple of months ago, I would say I was fully neutral on Big Joke generally. I kind of felt like, there were some good things and there were some bad things, but overall, I was just sort of neutral. My thoughts on that have changed a little bit, but let me explain the framework under which I'm thinking. There's a poem by Rudyard Kipling called If. I urge anybody watching this video to check that out. Actually, Michael Caine does a really good version. I'll try to put that, if I remember, I'll put that in the description, in the link, a link in the description below to that video itself. But again, if I forget to do that, it's Michael Caine If. You can just search it on YouTube. It's a great rendition of the poem. But there's a line in there, quoting directly, if all men count with you, but none too much. And that is kind of my thought with regard to Big Joke as of now. There was a time I was much more neutral. And the reason I have a certain amount of affinity, or I found kind of a lot of positives in him here very recently, at least in his career, few months back was the first time I had ever seen in the entire time I've been here in Thailand, and let me be clear, Thai law enforcement is fine. I don't think that they were remiss in the past, but it was the first time I had ever seen a law enforcement officer in this jurisdiction, or quite honestly, really any place else I've ever been, take upon themselves with great zeal the cause of trafficking of primarily women and children, and the abuse, sexual or otherwise, of women and children. Because it's just awful. And me personally, I've been witness in my own life to a person who I greatly respect, who had to adjudicate and deal with matters pertaining to sex offenses, and it's not pleasant. I was watching the film Citizen X the other day, and there's a part where the psychiatrist that they bring in to help in this case to find this serial killer says, yeah, if we weren't affected by these things, we'd all be monsters. It's something no one wants to talk about, and it's something nobody really likes to deal with. It's uncomfortable, but it has to be dealt with. We have to have strong law enforcement with regard to those issues. So insofar as that is concerned, when that came on Big Joke's radar, and he came down like a brickbat on it, you know, the way he should, and with his usual flair, I admit, and I guarantee there are plenty of officers in the Royal Thai Police and elsewhere in other law enforcement agencies here in Thailand who are diligently working on those cases without any of the fanfare, okay? And I'm not belittling or diminishing what they do, because what they do is just as important as any flamboyance or boisterousness associated with, you know, a different method of law enforcement. In this case, the type that Big Joke tends to like to practice, because he just seems to kind of like to make a splash. But that said, on that one issue, that was where I went from sort of neutral to favorably positive, albeit in sort of, again, a neutral sort of way, because at the end of the day, that is just something that I think we absolutely have to have vigilant and assertive, quite honestly, aggressive law enforcement to deal with those issues. Those just simply, there can be no lack of proactivity, there can be no lack of alacrity with regard to going after people who traffic in children and who abuse people sexually or otherwise. We have to have strong law enforcement there. So that's why I like Big Joke. But again, as the title implies, and in the spirit of that poem by Kipling, but not too much. Now, with regard to gambling, and again, I you know, from what I've read about the current head of Thai police, who's presently sort of on a sabbatical, like pending this investigation and everything, Torsak Sukwimon, he seems to be a very assiduous law enforcement officer as well, and seems to be someone who is not messing around either, quite honestly. I have no doubt that he is just as dedicated to law enforcement in Thailand as Big Joke is. But the point I'm trying to make, and with regard to gambling, by the way, if all of this is just sort of, you know, they talk about this sort of broad investigation, there's a lot of people accused and all of this good stuff. If we're going to go ahead and legalize gambling, this is just a thought. Much like cannabis, where when they legalized it, they just amnestied everybody and pardoned everyone, and, you know, they just let they opened the jails and let those folks out, because quite honestly, it was a bit silly for them to be incarcerated for cannabis-related crimes. If we're going to legalize gambling in Thailand, let's be realistic about it, and let's quite honestly be mature about it. In the past, there had been, I won't call it involvement necessarily by law enforcement, but maybe folks were looking the other way about different things. And quite honestly, you know, I would argue gambling's a victimless crime, you know, or maybe the victim is the person who undertakes it to begin with. So again, can you call somebody who does something to themselves a victim? Hard to say. You know, reasonable people can disagree. I'm sure there's social scientists or, you know, anthropologists or whatever out there that would say, well, yeah, it is, but I don't think so. Again, if we're going to legalize it, which is what we're talking about, maybe we should think about just amnestying everybody that may or may not have had some sort of direct or tertiary involvement with the thing before it was legal. And if we do that, maybe we just put it all behind us. That's just a thought on my part. But that said, people have asked me what I think of Big Joke, and that's what I think.